Hello everyone. So I think that's a little loud. Just okay. Thanks for coming along to the Innovation City session put on by the Moscow government, the Open Innovations Expo Forum, and also the variety of other stakeholders in innovation in Moscow. If you need translation devices there, so you could grab one if you need there. So it's good for translation. And most of the translation will be done by the lovely lady in the booth there who's smiling there. Yes, yes. Who will attempt to just tap a little, just to wave her hand if I talk a little fast. So you can tell me if I talk a little fast, and I will slow down a little. When I get excited, I talk fast. So basically, what we're going to do is we're going to do a few exercises as we go through the day, as well as talk about innovation in cities and innovation in government. Can we hear me okay, everyone? Is okay audio? Okay, cool. So I'm the executive director of this company here, To Think Now. We produce a ranking of all the cities for innovation around the world, and also classification. I'll wait for this to go. Okay, so we produce a ranking and a classification for all the cities in the world, So we have here some whiteboards which we might use throughout the day to do some group activities. Which we'll do throughout the day to do some group activities, Can you still hear me over the announcement, or it's okay? Okay. So basically, we'll get down to some interesting information. So this is kind of what we would call a sentence, if we're describing what we do or what it's about. This is what we do. So if you think of Facebook, what they do is they gather data at a personal level, one person. You have an account on Facebook, and you have all this data about innovation, about what a person does during the day, how they live, this sort of thing. So we don't gather data on people. We're not interested in individuals, we're interested in cities and the sum of economic activity at a business level, not at the personal level. So we gather information about infrastructure, maybe cultural assets like museums, this sort of thing, arts, galleries, all sorts of aspects of a city. But in gathering that information, we're not interested in individuals. So it's different to Facebook. Facebook is about individuals, and we are gathering data about the whole group. So we're interested in the sum of the transactions. We're not interested in whether one person catches the metro or not. We'd like to know how many stations there are on the metro, whether the metro runs on time, how often it shuts down, how fast it is, how much it covers, how long it takes to get from one point to another. And this would be a part of, an example of why we would be talking about innovation in the city. So this is basically what we do. So one of my colleagues at work, she did this circle diagram behind here. She's very happy about it. So the most important thing for her was that we put the circle, the globe basically in there in the background. She's extremely chuffed that it got into the presentation. And she put together the presentation for us. She's an analyst for us. So basically, what we do is we do this, And it's a company that was originally a spin-off of another company. So another company that used to do lots of work for the government in Australia and corporations, and used to be basically doing, if you like, data projects. Very complicated data projects, fixing things like somebody, for instance, the age of the bus fleet. Somehow or other, somebody lost track of the age of the bus fleet in the government. We actually fixed the problem of finding the age of the bus fleet and how often they should be replaced and the aging of the equipment. And someone else had an issue in another government department with the funding for ships, so we fixed the problem with the funding for ships. We fixed a lot of other data problems in the Australian government over the years. So this is a spin-off of a global spin-off of something that started in Australia. So I'm from Melbourne, Australia, which is a nice place to visit and very nice, very good city to live in. Like Moscow seems a very interesting and nice city for me to visit. And yeah, you have a better metro system in Melbourne though, so this is one thing you definitely have an edge on Melbourne for. And also I think sometimes perhaps internet here has some interest, is wireless is better too. Now, this is a little about me, and so currently we've done work with these people here, and there's a lot more. And as I said before, when they translated this into Arabic, they translated this as likes chicken instead of likes chicken parmas, and it read a little funny. So it was quite an interesting little thing that somebody in the Middle East, we were doing work for the Emirates, and they said, you like chicken, and this is what everybody in the room was saying to me at the time. You like chicken, you like chicken, you like chicken, because the translation said, he likes chicken, which I think is an interesting fact about someone. So, that's in Frankfurt there. So we're going to skip the discussion because this we did last night actually. So, one of the points about ideas, this is just a photo we picked for ideas, but one of the points about ideas is everybody has ideas, yeah? And it's easy to come up with ideas. The hard part is what? Come on, what's the hard part of an idea? Sorry, implement, yes. Eugenie is exactly right, it's implementation. So if you've got an idea and you want to create innovation, your problem will be the implementation of the innovation. So coming up with an idea, many ideas. You can have an idea in the shower, you can have an idea on the way to work, you can have an idea drinking a scotch in a bar, you can have an idea anywhere. But you can be crazy, you can have crazy ideas, you can have good ideas, and you can have bad ideas. But just having the idea, maybe it's not that useful as much as it is implementing the idea. And the more bureaucracy you have or more problems you have to deal with, the more it's about the process of innovation, yeah? So it's the process, not so much the idea. Good. So being crazy, having crazy ideas is okay. Does anybody have crazy ideas, just so I can see? I want to know who's the crazy people, yeah? Okay, maybe after a few drinks, crazy people, so. I've been told not to drink with Russians, but normally I can drink with Polish people and Serbs, so I should be okay with Russians. Australians normally can have a few drinks, yeah? Okay, so these are just a few projects we found and the analyst popped them in. So I might ask later on, we might come back to this, yeah? Now I'm just changing the presentation just a fraction because we have some different things. I've talked to you, just a few of you now, and I have a bit of an idea about what you're interested in. So what I will do is just change a little, just to adapt a little more presentation to fit what I think the group might be interested in, yeah? Because when people turn up, they always say different things to what you're told in advance, yeah? So later on there's a more complicated definitions of innovation, yeah? And we'll do some group activities as we go through, but so whoever you're sitting next to, you're probably stuck with them for a bit in terms of a group, and if you're not, you have to sort of move over. Hopefully some lovely ladies will sit over there as well, so it will be good. Implementing new ideas, creative dynamic products, or improving your existing services are three simple aspects of innovation, yeah? So the key thing is that innovation is not so much the creativity, it's more about the implementation of the ideas and more about the development of something new. So if it's a good idea, it should be easier to implement. If it's a bad idea, it'll be hell on earth to implement. So there's this idea sometimes in development that you can just, in project management, you can just throw money at a problem. And by throwing money at it, you'll get the project implemented. And the project gets bigger, and bigger, and bigger, and bigger, and bigger, and bigger, and then it fails. So when you get a good tip for project management is if you're on a team where you're in charge of a massive project, or you're a team member on a massive project, and it's getting bigger, this is when you start walking sideways very quickly to get away from the project. Because as soon as it starts getting huge, generally speaking, it will have some issues. And it's very hard to make a massive project work, except when it's something like a stadium or a roadway or a rail or something like this. Railways, roads, stadiums, they are very large. And you can see the physical progress, yeah? Or something like a conceptual project, like an IT-related or technology project. If it's getting really large, it's quite hard to get the support and to develop it over time. So if it's an infrastructure, you can see something being built, and it takes a little bit longer, at least you can see the thing being built. But if it's not infrastructure, it's some huge project. An example of this is the National Health System in Britain. They implemented a project that was over £1 billion. And from that, it didn't really work very well. It basically just failed, and then they had to roll it back. I was involved, I saw a project, one of my jobs was to fix a project for the Catholic Church, which was over probably it was in the millions. And basically this project required the stopping of everyone's payroll. So they messed up all the payroll and had to be reversed and re-implemented again. So a lot of projects have different areas to them. So I'm going to ask you in a moment what you would like to hear a little about. So first of all, who's seen this type of, the bendy phones? Has anybody seen this at all? Yeah, you've seen? Do they have it here anywhere? I wasn't sure. No, not yet? Okay, good. So the bendy phone is basically, if you think of an innovation such as a laptop computer was an innovation how many years ago? When was laptops new? 12 years, sorry? 12, 15, something like 15 years, okay. So a desktop computer was new before that. And when you used to go to these expos, and I've been going to expos for a number of years, but my father was in mainframe computers. So you go to an expo, you used to see desktop computers. Then you used to see laptop computers. Then you used to see something else like starting to see phones, PDAs. And now you see these, you see the smartphones. And the smartphone is replaced by the tablet. And then the tablet is replaced maybe by this. And the other one is what? What's the other one that people are talking about at the moment? The new thing from Google. Or Google. I don't know if say Google or Google. Google Glass, exactly right. But do you want a computer on your glasses? Who wears glasses here? You wear glasses as well? Okay. So who wants a computer on their glasses? Show of hands, just a curiosity. Okay, when you go to the bathroom, you don't want a computer on your glasses, right? Right, so it's a bit of an interesting thing. It will intrude on you. It's an idea, but maybe it's not as, it sounds really cool, but it's not necessarily going to be the next big thing, yeah? So the computer on the glasses might have some applications, say for military, very good for military, very good for maybe some segments of the economy, maybe manufacturing and picking faults. So if you're looking at a manufacturing, you can project a 3D schematic onto your glass and you can look at the actual manufacturing. It's very good. If you were driving a car and you could have a heads-up display, that may be better than a 3D glass. But this here means that you could put a computer screen on your arm, onto your coat. In fact, you could probably make a computer screen that wraps around your arm just like this, and voila. I'll be impressed when you can wash them. You can throw it in the washing machine, yeah? This would be good. So what I'm saying is that, like a new idea, as it comes through time, becomes more developed, yeah? Each new idea becomes more innovative, but not all ideas are necessarily going to succeed. So if you have an idea for the development of a city, or you see something new, yeah, it doesn't mean that the new idea is going to be the next big thing. So if you see Google Glass and everybody's saying this is cool, yeah, okay, it's cool, it doesn't mean it's going to be useful. So cool and useful are not the same thing. And one of the things I noticed sometimes in these expos, you find really cool stuff. But you've got to ask, is it going to be useful to someone? Who's going to need it? Who actually wants the idea? So if you see something, it's got to be useful. So an example would be metro timetables. They're useful, yeah? An example would be iPhone apps. So what's an iPhone app everybody likes here in Moscow? That's not an English one, but a Russian one. So what's a good iPhone app? Come on. I'm not going to do all the work, come on. Good iPhone app, tell me. iPhone or Samsung? Android?
Instagram.
Yandex Maps. So like Google Maps, Yandex Maps. Okay, good. Yandex Maps, okay. What else? Come on. You're just drinking coffee, you can say something.
Instagram here is very popular.
Sorry?
Instagram.
Instagram, okay, so Instagram. And how do you use Instagram here? Like, how do you use it just to take photos of what? What's the main thing?
To take photos of what you do in everyday life, what you visit, for example, from the Open Innovations Forum. So I'm here with everybody.
And so Instagram, so
Yeah.
somewhere at this point we'll be on Insta. Oh, good, okay, good. Okay, that's a good idea, yes. So Instagram, okay. So what's another app that you use? What's another one? Maybe a Russian one. So not something like a Yandex one, but something else. What's another app? Come on. The boys in the corner. Or over here. Okay. There's got to be one. I'm not
Maybe
giving up.
ВКонтакте.
Huh? Sorry?
Social.
Ah, okay, sorry, I didn't realize I thought it was from there. Okay, sorry, what did you say? What was it? Maybe what?
Network.
Social net ВКонтакте.
Okay, what's this one? It's social net. Is Russian app? Russian Facebook?
Yes,
Ah!
Russian Facebook.
Okay, Russian Facebook. Okay, so this is where all the drunk pictures end up, on Russian Facebook. Okay, right, okay. So, in Australia I have a friend who he's a South African, yeah? And we like Scotch, yeah? We have drinks of Scotch. And we have a rule, we don't put any photos on Facebook of either of us with Scotch. And we put a photo of the Scotch bottle, and we talk about the Scotch, but not a photo of us with the Scotch. So it's the same thing, right? So these apps, you use them because they have a purpose, yeah? They have some use to you, yeah? So if you're implementing an idea for citizens, yeah? Asking them to download a new app is harder than asking them to use something built off top of Yandex. Yeah? So something that works with Instagram, easier. Something that doesn't work with Instagram, harder. So if you're using a phone app, building on something that already works or people are used to is easier. If you ask people to download a new app, then you're asking them to do something. People are not that motivated to do something unless there's a reward. So it's interesting that an idea, maybe it's good to help people. So if you were doing, say, for car sharing there, you would maybe not ask them to download a new app, but ask them to use an app or build off an existing app. So this is a list of what we would call stakeholders. So a list of stakeholders, yeah? So these are the people, when you implement an idea in innovation, these are the people you have to keep happy in many respects, yeah? If you don't keep them happy, they normally get upset. When they get upset, they stop the innovation, or they don't support it, yeah? So this is a simple list, and there's a much longer list we'll get to in a moment. So basically, the first one on the list is the community. If you're doing a government innovation, it has to help the community, yeah? The next one are the competitors. In some respects, if you're doing an innovation in an industry, the competitors in the industry determine what happens. So if you just think about what your company does, instead of thinking about what everybody else does, then you have a bit of an issue. Also, we have the allied government departments, yeah? So which government departments are more innovative? Which ones are less innovative? This sort of relationship between the government departments. So who is on your side and who is not on your side? So if you have an idea you want to implement, we have a process we go through. It's called stakeholder management process. And it makes sure that you have the right people to support the idea. And we teach this process, but the more bureaucratic or the more difficult or the more you get a no every time you propose an idea. So if you're in a large organization, you get a lot of no's. You have to have a way to manage the no's so that you get to a yes, no matter what the no's are. We're all good? Okay. So what are some stakeholders you have? You have to do some work here. It's easier if you do the work, it'll help me with the stakeholders, because your stakeholders will be different. This is just a start. But what's people who have stakeholders in your projects? Come on. Sorry, who? Government, okay, but more specifically, like regulation or which one? Okay, regulation. Let's see. We're just doing an experiment because my writing is best described by my staff as unreadable at times. And so, unfortunately, my writing is not always that good because of too many years of typing. I started typing at 8 years old, so this means that I've lost the ability to write letters properly. Okay, well, we'll give Margarita a try. So she's assisting me from England. So the first one, regulation. Okay, second one from government was we said something else from government. Someone said here, I heard. Sorry.
The mobile kit for baby food project.
Oh, okay, good. So who are the stakeholders in that project? Like, who would be interested in it?
Do you want to listen driver my project?
No, just like who's a stakeholder? Like who's the Russian stakeholder?
Please translate. Anybody? Parents.
Parents, okay. So this would be classified as community. Community or families and community. Okay. So community, families. Okay, so then that's okay. That'll be for enough. I'll talk to you a bit more about it later. So also, what would be another one that we would have? So another stakeholder from the government. Entrepreneurs. Okay, that's a very good one. So entrepreneurs, yeah. And what would be another stakeholder from your department? What would be a stakeholder? Who would be a stakeholder? Okay, we know those in the same room. Okay, there we go. Sorry? Citizens. Citizens, okay, that's community. So we would add citizens, but it's a bit different here. So it's citizens, yeah? They're Russian. It doesn't matter. Everyone will understand it, yes? So it's okay. Citizens. I wasn't sure, I was going to get Margarita to write in Russian, but the issue for me is I can't then read in Russian what she's written, so it's easier if we do it this way. Citizens, yeah. Maybe if you want, you could write in Russian, and it'll be easier for them. Yeah, write in Russian, it's okay. Because then it's easier for them, and I'll just use my memory. Okay, so regulation, family, and entrepreneur, citizens. So, what else would be another stakeholder after that? Property developers, you mean? Like people who build the office towers and this sort of thing. Okay. So also add to that list property developers, yeah? Sorry? Universities. Oh, that's a good stakeholder. Okay, that's good. So in a university, who is the major stakeholder? The teachers, the students, who do you think? Okay. So add to that property developers, yeah, and universities. In Russian is okay. It'll be easier for everyone. Okay, so just starting with that list. If you had an idea and you wanted to implement that idea, some of those people can say no to your project, yeah? Right. So before you start, should you approach them before you start or after you've started? Should you have a plan before you start to approach them? Should you be optimistic? What should you do?
Should have a plan.
Have a plan? Yes. So like who I've been dealing with, Vera here and Arina, I think they have had a lot of plans in doing things, yes? Because to get things done, you have to have some plans, yeah? And so you have to have a good communication plan before you start. In fact, you have to look at it, which way the snake is going to go. And to figure out, no matter which way the snake goes, it's trapped. Because the plan is to look at all the possible outcomes and make sure all the possible outcomes lead to your goal. Yeah? Make sense? So, a couple more. So we've got infrastructure, we've got universities. A couple more. Oh, in Russia, very powerful, yeah? So manufacturing companies in Russia have a great deal of power, yeah? Yes, okay. So manufacturing. We could say oligarchs as well, or we could add that to the list, yeah? Perhaps. So all these people have an interest in the innovation that you're trying to achieve, yeah? So if someone has a lot of influence on the innovation that you're trying to achieve, and they don't agree with it, what's likely to happen?
They stop.
Yeah. Sorry? Down. Victor. Okay, Victor. Where are you from, Victor? Where are you from? Atin. Oh, Atin. Okay, nice to meet you, Victor. Okay, so you're right. It's down, yeah? So what happens is that each time something goes on, yeah, with government, there's like a process, yeah? And if you don't get the steps right before you start, then the thing falls over, because you have to have like the stages. Each time you do an idea, you have to have the stages planned before you start the idea. So this idea, you go and present your idea to everyone and you say how wonderful it is. Yeah, that's a very nice concept. But it also means that everybody who's against the idea gets a chance to array their forces against you before you start. So they're sitting here, and they're looking at you and they're against you, and they don't tell you. And then suddenly when you go forward to the next step, you're stopped. So before you start, it's better to have the end finished before you start the beginning. Eh? So if you like, a simple way to do this is to list every single person who has influence on the idea and what you can do to create innovation. So this applies to city innovation, like a new transport app. It applies to running this forum. It applies to running an event. It applies to running a new project for a new startup. It applies to any sort of company you're trying to start. Anytime you're doing something, you have to plan the end before you start so that you can achieve the outcome. Yeah? So these people here can all stop an innovation or they can support an innovation. So before you start talking about the innovation, you want to have the plan of the end. I think maybe we add 2 more stakeholders. What's 2 more we've got? Any 2 more? Come on. Huh? Residents. Residents, okay. Good, so add residents to the list. Thank you. Residents, like residents, homeowners, yeah? Investors, yeah, that's a good one, okay.
Maybe venture funds?
Venture capitalists?
Yes.
Okay, venture capitalists or investors. We'll call that investors. and know there's like three or four types of investors, yeah? Okay, what's another one? Mate, seeing we've got a few, I want to know a few more now. I'm curious. Okay, what else? Huh? Okay, business and technology parks. Okay, so put technology parks, read. And another? Come on. You're going well, see? This is good.
Транспортные
Oh, we've got
компании.
real estate developers already, property developers, yes? And,
Transport companies.
okay, big logistics, yeah? Yeah, okay. So, logistics, yeah? So we put logistics. Okay, and add to that individuals, we'll put ministers, and we'll add oligarchs or top business leaders, yeah? Put ministers and oligarchs, yeah? Ministers and oligarchs, yeah? And that'll be the last two. So, basically, these people, if they support an idea, you get the idea, yeah, going. If they don't support an idea, the idea stops. However, there's lots of ways to, we say lots of ways to skin a cat. Have you heard this phrase? Lots of ways to achieve the same objective. Yeah? Okay. Thanks, Reed. Okay. That's a lot. So basically, I'm going to get you to do a little bit of work. You've already done some work, but we'll do a little bit more. You can use these other whiteboards here. This one here is for the very short people. So if you're short, you can go over to this whiteboard. Apparently the stand had an issue. It had some sort of coronary or something. So, basically, what we'll do later is we'll do some whiteboard activities. But the point is, that's good we started that way. The whole point of the stakeholder process is to think, before you have the idea, can it be done? Because if you feel it can be done, it can be done. But you don't want to go like a, we say like a gringo, like a stupid person, just walk in and like a naive person and say, I have this idea, here we go. And then everybody gets against you, and then the idea stops. And you won't even see the bullet, we say don't even see the bullet coming. The bullet just comes from the side. So what you have to do before you have your idea, you have to think about how you're going to communicate the idea at the end. And who's going to support you and whose support you need, and whose support you don't need. So in all the years of doing, I started doing government projects when I was about 23. So in all the years of doing this, all the projects I managed, only two didn't succeed. And they were the two that I sub-managed, so someone else managed them. Every other project succeeded. Some were a little over budget, some were a little over time, but we got there at the end. We dragged the carcass of the horse across the line, even if people weren't happy. And we recently did a massive project for Samsung. And how we did that was was really basically kicking and screaming. At Sunday evening at 10 o'clock, everybody wants to go home. And we worked 28 days straight on this thing. And I said, we're not going home, we're finishing this damn thing. We're going to get it done until 10 o'clock, and then we go home and we come back tomorrow and we do it again. And I was there with everyone and we got it done. And we got it done, we did a 6-month project in 1 month by dragging the carcass of the horse across the line. It's sheer bloody will. But I'm not saying I recommend this, and I'm not saying that my health recommends it, but I've got a lot of energy, so at least that's a good thing. But if you do this, the only way you can do this is by planning out everything before you start. So by having a plan to map out all the stakeholders and who says yes and who says no, then you can do this. You can create an innovation. Even if people say it's impossible, if they say it's difficult, if they say it's stupid, if they say it's you're better off jumping off a cliff, you can still do it. At that 10 o'clock on Sunday, our own staff didn't believe we would finish it. We had basically 3 days to finish. And on 10 o'clock on the last day, of the very last day, otherwise we lost, let's put it this way, we would lose 150,000 rubles or more, I don't know how much exactly in rubles, but a lot of money, quite a lot of money, right? So, you know, it's a sizable amount. More than that, a lot more than that. So, anyway, we would have lost $50,000, let's put it this way, okay? If we were 1 day late. So we got it, we did it. And we got there and it was achieved. And when we achieved it, everybody just went, thank God this thing is over. Because there was a success fee. And the success fee was that we had to do it by the date. So whatever you have to do, you have to map out the start before you get to the end. Yeah? You can rely on your instinct, but in many cases, mapping out the start means to look at all the stakeholders and to figure out how they're going to say yes and how they're going to say no, and what you're going to do about it before you start. Yeah? Does this make sense? Can I get some Kermit Frog hands so I can see everybody's alive? Yes? Kermit the Frog hands? Okay, good-o. Okay, good-o. No fruit in them, that's all good. Okay. Do we have a question about that? If there's a question, that's okay. Okay, good. We will get to the food very shortly, I think, before it starts walking. So, in line with that idea, what type of innovation does your city need? So Moscow is a different city to London, it's a different city to Melbourne, it's a different city to all the different cities around the world. It's a very different city. Its layout is ring concentric. It has long distances to travel from one area to another. Crocus to the city is quite a long distance. On top of that, you have issues with transportation, traffic, police, a variety of things. Traffic is the number one thing that causes many delays and everything here. These are all in your book, by the way, these slides, so they're all there. And this is why I'm not changing the order too much, because it's at least you can follow in the book there. So you can take one of these green books if you like. So, does the city need what you're proposing? So if you're proposing something, is there a need? So, any idea you're coming up with, what does the city need? If it's a good idea, the city has to need it. Doesn't mean it knows it needs it. It has to need it. So, let me ask you a question. Who's got an iPad here? Somebody got an iPad? Can borrow an iPad? Just to show, not to use. Eh? Okay, you've got an iPad. Okay, thank you. Oh, it's one of the new little mini ones. Okay, cool. Cool bananas. Okay. So you've got an iPad. How many people do you think Apple asked about the design of the iPad? It's a trick question, but how many people do you think they asked? Just saying...
Nobody.
No? No, don't know? Okay.
Nobody.
Huh?
Nobody.
Zero, exactly right. Vera's exactly right, Vera. So, zero, exactly. Do you think they went out and asked everyone what they wanted to know about the iPad? Do you think they bothered to even, tell anyone? Because it's a good design, isn't it? The iPad's a good product, yeah? It's a good product. It was designed by Steve Jobs and Jonathan Ives, and two people, and they had a good idea. Did they need to ask anyone? No. And the point of that is that if you have a good idea and somebody needs it, and you have faith that they need it, and you figured out that people need it for real, not just that you think it's a good idea, then you don't really need to ask too much permission to do it. But you have to figure out how you do it. So when Apple figured out how to launch the iPad, pass it back, yeah. They have figured it out in such a way that, thank you. They figured out in such a way that it would be a product that would be what we call self-sustaining. So the idea took its own weight, its own momentum, and didn't require too much effort beyond the initial design. Do you know how they... Oh, it's a rag there, yeah? Okay, listen, okay. Okay, so I'm just going to wipe this bit. Who knows about the iPod, when the iPod came out? Does anybody remember the iPod? Who's got an iPod? Music player it is. Who's got an iPod, yeah? Who still uses an iPod? Show of hands. Anybody? Okay, you still use an iPod. Okay, good up. Yeah? Okay. And who uses their phone to play music? Phone. Okay, who has a vinyl record player? Anybody have a vinyl record player? Okay. Oh yeah, okay. It sounds better on vinyl, I have to say. I don't have one, but I know from people who are really into audio, they tell me vinyl sounds better. Okay, CD players. Who uses CD players? Not in the car, but just in the home. Yeah? Okay, cool. Okay. So, the good thing about a CD is you own it, right? So, when they designed the iPod, you know how Steve Jobs designed it? He put that on the board and he left. So, he basically, by writing that, he said, forget all your rubbish you're talking about, do that. He left, that's it. Does that make sense? So obviously he's a genius, right? But the point is, he in one idea, he captured the whole thing. He knew what people needed. He didn't do a survey, he didn't go around asking 5 million people what they needed. He didn't go around talking to lots of people and trying to figure out everything. He knew in his head that this is what they needed. And then he figured out how to achieve it. And he left the problems to everyone else, but still he's the type of guy who was involved in every step. He didn't let go. So if you've got an idea and you want to do it, you have to make sure, you have to know that you're going to be married to that idea. You're going to be stuck with it, yeah? That idea is yours. If you decide you don't want to do the idea once it's got momentum, too bad. You've got the idea, it's yours. If it doesn't succeed, it's yours. If it succeeds, it's yours. But also maybe it'll be that someone else is like someone higher up who might just step in sort of nicely and take a photo with you and then edge you out of the photo sometimes, yeah? But in general, that's a good thing still. Either way, it's yours. So if an idea is yours, then basically it's your responsibility. So if you want to do something, you have to make sure you like what you're doing and you want to achieve it and you want to be committed to it for a period of time to achieve the idea. So Steve Jobs said that. And then, basically, from that came the innovation, yeah? So it takes a time to achieve that. He didn't just say that and then 1 month later. No, it's time. You can't just say an idea and then just have it happen. You can't just say chair and then chair happens. It's like it has to be developed. So, before you waste time on an idea, you should make sure that it satisfies someone. So Steve Jobs knew there was a market for an easy-to-use music player. So yesterday I was saying to someone that there are markets for things where people need to use something easy. Whenever it makes someone's life easy, people will buy it. You won't have to give it away for free. You want something people will buy or something people will be involved in. If you're working in city government, you want something people will take for free and feel that they got value from it, that it makes the government look good, makes the government look like it's doing something for citizens, yeah? So it's like, and maybe the translation of this, I'm not sure it's going to be perfect exactly because there's a sort of subtle meaning in there, but it's like you want the idea to benefit someone and to not only benefit them, but to feel that they benefited. So they feel grateful for the idea, yeah? So it's not just to satisfy, but to feel like they got a little bit more, yeah? So these are just some questions, and then we'll have a short break. Who will support the idea? So these ones here. Who's going to back it? A lot of ideas that are bad get implemented. So you want to make sure that you implement good ideas. And if you have good ideas, which I think many of you are here because you have good ideas, then it's your duty to make sure that you push out someone else's bad idea, kill it, stample it to death, and get your idea ahead of it. Stamp it to death because you have to kill the bad ideas to make sure the good ideas win. And when you start the idea, you have to know how it's going to finish. So one of the things we do is we measure cities, yeah? So how do we measure the idea? How do we measure its success? What's the outcome? Is it how many units we sold? Is it something like a metric? Is there a way of measuring it? And how will this be rewarded? So these are just some questions to think about with your ideas for government innovation. And I think we might... So for those of you interested in the cities, we were just talking about SMART yesterday. One last thing. SMART is like a phrase for infrastructure and the soft and hard infrastructure. So soft is what? What's a soft infrastructure in a city? Soft infrastructure like forms. What's another soft infrastructure? From the city people. No?
Нет,
Smart infrastructure.
Yes, so like a soft infrastructure would be something like a form or an idea like this, or maybe electronic forms, yeah? There's soft infrastructure, yeah? Hard infrastructure is like railways. So this is the meaning of the two. So hard infrastructure is like railways, roads, the taxis are sort of hard infrastructure, could be argued soft. Anything that's like a physical big thing. And then soft infrastructure is like the IT infrastructure. So a lot of what's happening here, or at least with the startups and that, is about IT infrastructure. Softer infrastructure. And then a lot of what people need in cities sometimes is hard infrastructure. So your metro is what? Hard infrastructure, very hard. If you fall over on the metro, it's very hard, yeah? So, soft infrastructure is what? What's
Sites.
the soft?
Different sites for cities.
Wi-Fi.
Science or sites?
Sites.
Sites.
Portals.
Portals, yes, that's perfect. That's a very good example, yes. And sorry? Human capital, yes. And actually, I think historically, there's been a lot of good writers and scientists and sociologists and PhDs and all these people who have discussed human capital, maybe more in Moscow or more in Russia in general than many Western cities. So this is more of something where you probably have an edge, if you like, because human capital is not always recognized or valued appropriately in Western countries. There's less value placed on human capital in some instances. So it's an interesting area. Okay, what was another one for soft? Come on, we've started now. Something soft infrastructure.
Wi-Fi.
Huh?
Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi, yes, okay, good, Wi-Fi. That's soft?
Подскажите, как сказать предпринимательский дух по-английски? Entrepreneurship
Yes,
spirit.
okay. So, do you know how, so if you were to take, so let's measure entrepreneurship experience. Just quickly, I'll leave you with a metric, okay? How many entrepreneurs are maybe in, say, Silicon Valley? How many do you think? I mean, it's impossible to measure an exact number because you're measuring people, but it's in thousands. Yeah, thousands, exactly. So some of those people have 30 years experience. Yeah? They work at Google. Some of them funded Google. So you take the total cumulative hours of their experience. So 30 years experience, working a 50-hour week, because you're never working less than a 50-hour week if you're doing anything good. So 30 years, 50 hours a week, 50 weeks, 2,500 hours, 30 years, that's 30 years times 2,500, which is 75,000 hours, so on and so forth. That's a lot of experience. So 75,000 hours times, let's say 100,000 people, and you just keep adding zeros. Now, how much experience is in another city compared to Silicon Valley? So, experience, here. See the difference? Cumulative hours of experience. So when I'm employing people to do analysis, I look at we grade people on how many cumulative hours of experience they have in analysis. And then there's also how smart you are, but cumulative hours. So if you were to create a metric for entrepreneurship, you could create a metric called cumulative hours of entrepreneurship experience and use an algorithm to calculate it. But that's another story. So, just a simple example, but everything can be turned into a metric. So anything, we could turn into a metric. We could turn into a metric how like the probability of having a table at a conference. We could turn anything into a metric. There's so many things. You can turn into a metric the distribution of people at a conference. How many people cluster at the entrance? How many people cluster at the exit? You can turn into the throughput of the people. You can turn anything to a metric. So once you get metrics, then you can measure the success or the improvement in the metric. Yeah. So we're going to have a break, and we're going to talk a little bit more. But so this is just tying it to SMART. Yeah. So we'll have 15 minutes just to go to the bathroom, have something to drink and eat and this sort of thing, and then we'll keep going. Yeah. Okay. So I do it on a consensus basis, which is to That normally we're supposed to run till 5. If we feel at 4:30 we will stop at 4:30. If you're looking like you're dead, then I will stop at 4:30. If you're looking like you're alive, we will keep going till 5. Yeah. So either way, but the schedule is 5, and to break at lunch will be scheduled at 1. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Good. So basically, we were just talking about human infrastructure, which is our term for innovation in the smart city concept, yeah? So we're talking about hard infrastructure versus soft infrastructure. And hard infrastructure we were discussing was the development of things like public transport and cables and engineering, all those things that normally cities should be quite good at, yeah? So one of the issues with hard infrastructure is that you always need more of it. So you always need more roads, you always need more railways. There's an interesting theory on highways, that if you build another highway, within about 10 years it'll clog up with cars, and you'll need to build another highway. In fact, in Melbourne in the 1970s, where I'm from, they promised a highway that would end all highways. And in 10 years, it was clogged up with cars. Because more cars on the highway, more people buy cars. And back then, there was 1 car per family. Now in Australia, normally it's 1 car per person. Some people have more than 1 car. And consequently, kids, teenage daughters, teenage sons, they normally drive a car at the age of 18. So you have every child has a car over the age of 18, almost. And then every parent has a car. And then some people have a 4-wheel drive as well as a car. So they have a car, a 4-wheel drive, and the kids have cars. So that means that people live out in the suburbs, which means they drive to work, which means they drive with 1 person per car, which means that your road that was designed for a family car with 4 people in it is now no longer relevant, because basically you've got a car, you've got 1 person per car. So this is actually, for those who are economics people, it's, I'm going to rub this off here. It's supply and demand curves, and it's the unpredictable effects of supply and demand that says that, 1 car is, if you create more supply, you'll have more demand in some respects. So without going into it, but in a sense, the creation of supply actually sometimes can generate demand. So you create a road, then suddenly you're going to have more demand for the use of the road. People don't think about that. They think only that we increase the supply of road, but actually you increase the demand at the same time. So this is what I mean about planning to the end. If you're thinking about infrastructure, then one aspect of innovation is to think, what will people do when we put the infrastructure in? So if your project is an infrastructure project for economic development, if you build a new stadium, what will people do? So how will they behave? So how they will behave will determine how useful the stadium is. So just building a stadium, like some of the World Bank projects where they build a massive piece of infrastructure in an emerging economy. So not Russia, but in maybe Africa or something like this, they build a massive stadium or they build a massive road. Sometimes a road to nowhere is a massive highway, and it stops. It doesn't create the economic wealth, in a sense, because it's not been thought through how it's going to be used. So when you design something, you're thinking about, in innovation terms, our model would say that you would think about the uses of the innovation, or the end before the beginning. So before the idea is approved, the thinking is to think, what will be the actual outcome of this? Because you're going to spend the money on one thing. There's going to be a public relations exercise. There'll be people standing there taking photos of the bridge or the road, and there'll be companies making a lot of money. There'll be lots of people well off from it. There'll be lots of people winning. There'll be some people losing. But in the end, when those people win, you want to make sure that the people winning have invested in the right road, not the wrong road. Yeah. So thinking about the project before it starts is very important. So even with infrastructure, it's necessary to consider the the ideas behind the infrastructure or the investment before you invest. So all of these things are called human infrastructure. So when we measure a city, we measure all these things. We measure the metro system. We measure roads to a lesser extent these days because in many cases the roads are quite good. We measure mainly transport and things like that, telecommunications infrastructure, number of fixed phone users, number of broadband users, size of broadband network, points of connection, things, all sorts of interesting things. Some of this is done through measuring the data, through connecting other people's data. Some of it is done through algorithms to estimate. So, for those of you who want to think about what Moscow is as an innovative city, or your own city if you're from a region, okay, one question, this is a definition, but one question. Who's not from Moscow, who's from another city in Russia so I can see? Okay, you gentlemen, where are you from?
From Voronezh. It is about 500 kilometers to the south from Moscow.
Yes.
I was born in Tver.
Okay, good.
It's 200 kilometers to north.
Moscow, yes. Okay. And also? He's volunteering you. There we go. Yes, no, you have to, you've been chosen. Where are you from in Moscow?
Dimitrovgrad, 800 kilometers to the south from Moscow.
Dimitrovgrad?
Yes. Dimitrovgrad.
Dimitrovgrad, okay. Yes, okay. Who else is from?
I was born in Siberia,
Yes.
near of Baikal.
Near,
Baikal Lake.
okay, right. And is it near, which is the nearest big city to it? The nearest large city?
Novosibirsk.
Novosibirsk, okay.
Irkutsk.
Good. And Kursk, okay, good. Okay, another one, the others? One on this side completely. Sorry? Marina,
I was born in Belarus.
Belarus?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. So, if you think about Moscow and you think about the cities you were born in or a city you visited, yeah? How easy is it to implement an innovation or an idea? So you have the idea, you implement it, and then you communicate it. Now, this is a big concept, so this is not to go through this whole concept in the short time we have, but just to think about the idea part. You know, some cities are easier. So if you live, say, in San Francisco, yeah, it's easier to implement an idea. Yeah? Would you say that it's easier to find the labor and everything to get your idea off the ground? Yeah? Funding, investors, support. Yeah? But have you noticed that if you say you're living in New York, yeah, another city, have you noticed how bad sometimes the traffic is in those cities as well? So some ideas can succeed in one city, but they can't succeed in another city. So if you have a technology idea, where would you go in some respects? The first thought, where's the first thought for technology ideas is... Vera is in Russia, yes, Moscow, yes, that's correct, yes. But globally, people go to San Francisco, right? Okay, what's the problem with San Francisco? Anybody know a problem? What's the problem they have? Okay, they don't have great weather, my definition of great weather, but anyway. So, okay, no, Moscow doesn't have great weather either. But, so what's the problem they have? Cost of living. Okay. Shortage of engineers. They have a shortage of engineers. You have to pay people $200,000 US to work for you. So your costs are very high. So if you were going to the US and you had an opportunity to go to Dallas, you might pay someone 1/3 for the same person with the same university degree. They may not be they have the smartest people, the best people in San Francisco. They have some great people there. And that's why they're worth the money. And some of the very best programmers in the world are there. But the point is, they have a cost disadvantage. Also, how many people are going there? How much competition is there in San Francisco? Is there a lot of competition? A lot. So if you have an idea and you go to San Francisco, what do you think happens maybe?
It will be down.
It might get lost, yeah? And if it's a great idea, it might get funded. But say Boston, for instance, has lower costs than San Francisco and has a good ecosystem for entrepreneurs, yeah? So it's another place. Another one is Toronto in Canada is another place that's quite good. Maybe also you could go to Dallas, Fort Worth in Texas, in the US. Those places are good for ideas. So you take the best place, the one that everybody calls out, Silicon Valley. And indeed, this is what the government sometimes says they want to copy Silicon Valley, yeah? But they have a weakness, cost of getting engineers. In fact, many engineering projects are done, IT engineering projects are done in Ukraine. Because the cost of the engineers is good, and also there's a lot of very qualified, very good programmers and very good network support people and this sort of thing. So Kiev has a good support for these things. Moscow ranks ahead of Kiev, even if Kiev has sometimes more support for technology. Why do you think that is? Moscow is a more important city in the global scheme of things, not just one thing. So if you see a negative in a city, there is a positive to balance the negative in many cases, yeah? So, okay, if you're in, what's the most remote city you can think of in Russia? What's the most remote? Over 1 million population. Huh?
Vladivostok.
Well, okay, Vladivostok. Is that an agreement with Vladivostok being remote, the most remote? Yeah, most disconnected, yeah? Most disconnected in Russia, you think? Is that fair? Like separated. Kaliningrad. Okay. So, even that city can develop innovations, yeah? But it has more trouble getting into the global network, yeah? So when you're flying to Russia, where do most of the flights go to? If you're flying in from Australia, from Great Britain, from everywhere, which two cities? Moscow and St. Petersburg, right. So what would be the third city that people would fly into in Russia? Novosibirsk. So I know Transaero, S7, and a few the other airlines fly to Novosibirsk, yeah? Okay.
Казань.
Kazan, yes, that's a good one, yes. So Kazan actually has an interesting ecosystem around it. There's lots of development that could be done in Kazan, right? So in each region there's development that can be done. Some aspects of the development, Moscow is the most interconnected city in Russia. It's the most, even St. Petersburg is second, it has better connections to Europe. Moscow has to reach more of the Middle East. So where is all the money right now? And in some respects, where is the most amazing buildings being done? What city in the Middle East? Dubai, right. So I was in Dubai only maybe a month ago, and I was in the Middle East only before I came here, right? And they are building, the Burj Khalifa is 124 stories high, yeah? And it's amazing, it's built in the middle of the desert. It's the tallest building in the world. It's got an amazing view of the whole city. They built this in the middle of the desert. They built many other amazing things in Dubai, right? And you see an amazing skyline, an amazing thing. They're in the middle of the desert. They've got nothing except oil. So what I'm saying is that it's not just the connection, but what they are doing in Dubai, which is very clever, they're making themselves the center of the universe. You know that, so how do you think Australians fly to Europe? Very difficult, with great difficulty.
Dubai?
Through Dubai, yes. So if you fly to Europe, there are about 4 ways from Australia. The first is through one of two Asian cities. So what's the first Asian city you think you might fly through? Singapore. Exactly right. So Singapore is a global hub. Now there's some whinging in Singapore because they're feeling that they're declining in importance. Yeah? So Singapore is not as important as it once was, perhaps. There's a feeling there. They're jealous of which city, do you think?
Maybe Tokyo.
No, not Tokyo. Tokyo, they've resolved their differences. What's the other city? That's an island like Singapore, the biggest competitor to Singapore. Exactly right. So, Hong Kong is a global competitor. So what's another airline hub city in Asia? No, in Asia though. So one of the cities would be Kuala Lumpur, yeah? So what does Kuala Lumpur have in common with the Middle East? What do they share on their values? Religion, exactly, they're Islamic. So many people from, they're not only Islamic, but there's a large portion of Islamic people there. So they share like basically a connection between Kuala Lumpur and also between the Middle East. So many people from Kuala Lumpur, they holiday in the Middle East, many people from the Middle East holiday in Kuala Lumpur. So if you're flying between these cities, right, you have to fly 24 hours from Australia to get here, right? The minimum is 21. I think if you're really lucky, you can get 20 hours and 30 minutes, and that's the best. If you're really unlucky, you can fly 36 hours. So it's not much fun, the 36 hours, let me tell you. So all Australians normally have to travel a lot, and as a result, they get used to it. So 13 hours in the plane is considered, okay, fine, no problem. Hopefully with to sleep in the plane at least. But the point is that Dubai has now the centre of the hub for all the flights going in and out of Australia with the major airline, which is Qantas. So Qantas, and what's the next big airline out of Dubai is Emirates. So every time somebody flies, where do they spend their money? Dubai. Right, so they're the hub. What has Dubai done? They have very strict rules. They have strict rules like Moscow. They search your papers. They do everything. They're very strict. More strict than here even. And what have they done though? They made themselves the hub. So this is a big idea. It's not something you can do today. But I'm just saying that in general, being the hub of something or being the centre is one of the things that is a long-term thing that needs to be done at a government, federal level to make the city the centre of not just the region, but the whole of the greater region. The city that becomes the centre through its airport becomes the centre of everything. So London used to be the centre, but has anybody flown into Heathrow? Who's flown into Heathrow? Okay. So does anybody hate Heathrow, or didn't like it, or did like it? So, okay. So a lot of people hate Heathrow. It's a horrible airport. Rita here will tell you when she gets back that the Heathrow is not the best airport in the world. They lose your luggage, they do all sorts of things to make your life very difficult. But the British improved it for the London Olympics, so now it's not too bad. But the point is, it's still a global connection, but it's losing some part of that to other cities which have other airports, yeah? So in a sense, being this centre makes you the centre point. It's a big idea, but it's just an idea that is like you can be the centre of it. It's not something you can do today, it's something that can be done as a long-term thing. So, if you want to implement an idea in the Middle East, Dubai is the centre, yeah? And if you want to fly from Australia, you have to fly 13 hours to Dubai, then 7 hours to here, or 4 hours or 5 hours, but it's a total of about 20-something hours to anywhere in Europe. So basically you fly 13 hours to the Middle East, and then another 7. Or you fly 7 hours to Asia, and then 13 hours from Asia. There are your two choices. There is no direct flight. This means that the places where you stop are the hubs, in some respects. They are the centre of activity. So, in the longer term, there are ways to become that. But this is just a thought, but it's important. So within this area, Moscow is the centre of activity. Yeah, you're right.
Yes, I have a question. When you're talking about becoming an international hub, is it the aim for the city or for the airport? For example, in Moscow there are 3 airports or maybe more, but the most convenient is Sheremetyevo Airport, and now they are doing their best to become the best airports in the world, so to say. They open new terminals and so on. So, to my mind, it is more, we're speaking about the airports, not about the cities.
We are speaking about the airport, but it's an example of the city. Because if people don't fly through the airport, they don't see the city.
But when you're a transit passenger, you are sometimes not allowed to go into the city.
Then you have to change the visa regulation for this.
Okay.
So I'm just talking about a bigger thing. So I'm saying that from a big idea point of view, one indicator is the international airport, right? This is something we measure. We need to measure the innovation in the city. So the international airport and the connections, it affects many things. So that one point of becoming more internationalized, so the airport's improving its terminals, yeah? So more people will choose to fly through that airport, yeah? Once they improve the terminals. Then more flights come in, it means more people stop over. So there's a two-part problem. There's a visa problem, visa has to be changed, and the airport has to be changed. But there's a lot of stuff to that, a lot of areas to that. And it's quite complicated because there's many, many rules and regulations as to why it's the way it is. But the point is the Emirates have done it, so it's interesting. Okay, so I'll move on from the big idea to something else. So if you have your idea, you have to think about how you can implement it here and how you can, where else you can implement it. So where are the markets for your idea? So from Moscow, where can you take the idea? This is where. So if your idea is successful here, where do you go? You go, which cities are easiest for you to get to? You know, which cities are the best markets for your idea? Because once you have one idea, you need to grow the idea. It will grow of its own accord if it's a good idea. So you asked about the three-factor, the model, yeah? So basically, each city should score well on three factors, yeah? And one of those factors is human infrastructure. And what is an area of infrastructure we were talking about, Vera? I got your attention, there we go. Area of infrastructure was the airport, right? So, it's the airport, and then another area of infrastructure, the metro, yeah? So, these are the three factors we talk about. So, for ideas, this is cultural assets, yeah? So who's had a good idea where do you get your best ideas? Tell me where you get your best ideas, come on. So which place? Like in the museum, in the shower, in the car, where? The countryside, okay, that's a good one, yes. Okay, so you go to the countryside and you get an idea. Okay, good. Come on.
In my office.
In your?
Office.
Office, really? Okay, good. Must be a nice office then, that's good. Okay. And?
The university.
University, okay. Okay. When I was at university, I wasn't so much getting the ideas at times, yeah, so, yeah. Okay, so what else?
Subway.
Where?
Subway.
Subway. Yes, I agree with you. I get good ideas on the tram. We have a tram in Melbourne, like light rail. So I get good ideas there as well. So Subway is a good point. You're not driving, so you can think a bit more, yeah? Good. Another one? It's personal, right? So everybody has their own thing.
Maybe when you're waiting for somebody or something.
You get an idea when you're waiting. Yeah, so you're waiting for someone and your mind wanders and the idea, yeah. Okay. What's another one? Yes. Vladimir, what's it? Sergey. Okay, Sergey. So, Sergey said on the plane, which is good, yeah? Because often that's when I used to get a lot of ideas when sitting on the plane and you're having a drink, you're reading something, you don't really care too much, and your mind engages. What's one last one? Come on. One last one?
When I'm cooking.
When you're? Cooking. Ah, good, okay. So, cooking is something. So, what's the common thing about these ideas? What's the common thing about all these different places?
Maybe concentration.
Yeah, it's actually lack of concentration. You're relaxed, right? So if somebody yells at you and they tell you, come up with an idea, and they just stand here and they yell at you and they tell you to come up with an idea, are you going to come up with an idea? Not so much, yeah? So if you're being yelled at or being told to come up with an idea, or you're under a pressure cooker environment, maybe you won't have so many ideas, yeah? Yeah? Okay. So the common thing is being relaxed in those idea stages, yeah? So if we were to measure the places where people would have ideas, what would we measure? Based on what you said, what would we measure? The first one was nature, yeah? Over there. So we'd measure the beach, wouldn't we? Yeah? That's a place to get ideas, yeah? So, and somebody suggested the subway, so metro. We measure the metro, wouldn't we, in some respects? Does anybody get ideas when they go exercising or running or anything like this? Yeah. So running, okay. So maybe gym, measure that, yeah? So where else would you get ideas? We said other places, we said a few. Huh? Office, okay. That one we didn't get to measure that much, so that one I don't think we have a metric for that, but no, but that's a good one actually, to say that, okay. What else? Universities, yeah, you said universities, yeah, okay, so we measure that, right, so each one you get and you measure, yeah? So when you said also cooking, yeah? So in the home, we would measure some aspects of, say, the environment around the homes, maybe some cluster aspects, yeah? So in effect, you're measuring what you would term, and the simplest way to understand it, is cultural assets, yeah? Because they're assets. What is a beach? Is it an asset? Nature is an asset, yeah? So in many ways, you're measuring something where you can relax, yeah? So this is where, if you're measuring that, you're measuring the ability to generate ideas. So if you live in, what's a city nobody wants to live in? Come on, somewhere nobody wants to live. Really bad city. Doesn't have to, not in, we'll keep it politically free. We won't say anywhere in Russia that you don't want to live. Somewhere else in the world you've heard of, you don't want to live. Huh? Detroit. Yes, good example, very good. A failed state. Detroit is a city that's doing what? Shrinking. I know, I met a couple of people from Detroit when I was traveling in Paris, so there were people from Detroit there. And I know some people who actually lived in Detroit and left after a year because it was that bad. So Detroit's a good example. What's another one?
Many Mexican cities would not prefer to live there.
Yeah, like Cali. Cali's where there's a lot of shooting and drugs and things like that. I won't diplomatically say anything about Mexican cities because it would cover too broad a base. But perhaps Cali would be a good example of somewhere most people prefer not to live. Where's another one? Okay, what city in China though?
Guangzhou, I think.
Guangzhou, okay, very crowded. Yeah, very smelly, yeah, okay. What would be one last one?
Maybe Delhi.
Okay, good. So, each of these cities that people prefer not to live in, let's take, for instance, I was looking for Pyongyang or something like this as well, or Detroit. But Detroit, we got to Detroit, we didn't get Pyongyang. But, okay, let's take Detroit. Does Detroit have good museums? Does anybody know? Not really, nothing much. It's pretty much a cultural wasteland. Does it have good art? It used to have some, does it have now? So if we measure the streets, are they good, clean streets? No. Are the office occupancy rates good? No. So Detroit really doesn't have much. Really, if you measure all their assets, are they growing or are they shrinking? Shrinking, yeah? So where are they going in the rankings? So, it's like that because they're shrinking. And do you measure all their infrastructure? Do they have a good metro system? No. Now there was the thing with Detroit is they had some interesting projects that gave them a potential boost. But unfortunately, they're not doing so well. Now there are many other very strong cities in the US which are doing exceptionally well, and beyond San Francisco. So you could look at, say, maybe San Diego is a good city, or Dallas-Fort Worth, which are two cities joined together. Or Pittsburgh is starting to do some interesting things because they had similar problems to Detroit. Philadelphia has some interesting programs. So there are many cities and they all do many interesting things. But the point is they grow. They're growing something. Okay, so the infrastructure, we sort of get that. And then the markets. The markets are how connected everything is. The last one is what we would call a black box, or very complicated to explain. It's so many things that can go right or wrong, and it's all sort of interrelated. So it's like you pull one string, and the rest sort of untangles. The first two are easier to understand. The last one is beyond the scope of what we're talking about. But the point is, it's in structure, it's like how networked it all is. How is it all networked? How does it all connect? So how does the city connect to all the other cities? How is it? How much power does it have? So historically, is Moscow a center of world power? Yes, it's one of the most influential cities in the world, always. And it's going to always be one of the most influential cities in the world, regardless of what happens. So it has a base. So it does, if we look at another city, what was one we called out? Not Delhi, but another one. Somebody said, what's another city we call it? Tokyo, I think. Okay. Is Tokyo's world power, how long has it held power in the world? Not that long, yeah? Wasn't that relevant? 2 decades, right. So Tokyo now has power, but was it relevant 100 years ago? Not so much. Has Moscow been relevant for 100 years or more? Yeah, so if you go back to the pre-Russian Revolution, post-Russian Revolution, back to the Tsar, before the Tsar, you go back further than that, you go back to Napoleon, so, okay. So you have a base. So this thing here has a base, right? So you can't negate the base. In short terms, does it have a big army? This is a much bigger concept, but just, does it have a big army, Russia? Yes, yeah? Right, so it has a base of power and support and that in the world. If you are from Colombo, Sri Lanka, do you have the same influence? No. Are there a lot of, how many Russians are around the world? How many Russians are in London, for instance? Maybe more than the airport, yes. They don't bother checking the visas at the passport at the airport, they just go, right, Russian queue, right, so. There's a funny story, actually. I was in Rome, and it's many years ago, and I was at the American Express office getting money changed, yeah? And there were 3 queues. The first queue was to change the money. The second queue was to report lost stolen items. And the third queue was for Americans to report lost stolen items. So they actually had a special queue for people from America who had lost their passport, lost their money, and lost all their wallets. So it was like a 3-queue system. And the Romans, being very practical people, had created this system because they had such a long queue. And the longest of the queues, which one was it? The American queue for losing their wallets, right, so, and passports, pickpockets, yeah? So, it's a funny story, it's just an anecdote, but basically it's interesting that each country has this base, yeah? In some countries like America, Russia, France, Great Britain, Germany, yes. Germany is perhaps newer to the table than some of the others because of the breakup of Prussia and but yeah, Prussia and Germany, yes. And but those countries have that power, so they have that influence, yeah. So you have Germany, you have Russia, you have France, you have Great Britain. They have that influence over time, and now you have which country rising? China. Okay. But is China new? It's very old. Yes. And so it has a long history, yeah? Right. And its history is that it's actually invented things like gunpowder, yeah? The printing press, in some respects, they invented some parts of that. Material processes, food processing processes, they invented many innovations, yeah? So, what have they invented in, say, Seoul? Is it more recent than China? South Korea, is it more recent than China? It is, isn't it? It's rising though, isn't it, Seoul? Seoul's an interesting city, it's doing very well. Actually, if you're looking at e-government case studies, Seoul is one of the cities you would look at for e-government, yeah? So, they have some of the best e-government stuff going around. Okay. Anyway, so this is looking at your cities. So there's a base here, and there's lots of things that happen. Now, there's lots of ways to change things, or to look at this model, or discuss the model, or to think of the model, and to improve things. And the same model can be used for a business as for a city. Because if you use it for a business, you're talking about the process of taking an idea, implementing, and communicating to the market. So when you come up with an idea as a startup, what's missing? You win an award as a startup. What's the missing thing? So if somebody wins an award, they get an award for being a startup. And they win an award and they get, so many thousand rubles. What's the missing thing? Have they implemented the idea? Have they created the idea? Not so much. It's just the early stage, yeah? So it's very basically, it's like an idea is just here. It's got all this way to grow. So it's like what we say nascent. I'm not sure of the translation of this word nascent. Like in very early infancy, like an embryo. Yeah, so the word nascent is like an embryonic stage, yeah? Okay, but this is talking about cities now, just in general. So we've got any questions about cities and that, we can maybe do a few questions. It's a good way to do it, yeah? Don't be shy. Ah, Vera, okay, Vera has questions. Okay, I'll pass you this. You go. Yeah.
You mentioned Toronto as a very good city for implementing your ideas.
Yes.
In comparison to Moscow, you mentioned that climate in Toronto is much better.
Did I say that?
So I'd like to argue.
I didn't say that.
Maybe I misunderstood.
I didn't say climate in Toronto is much better than Moscow. I didn't say that.
And could you then please clarify what you meant, because I misunderstood.
Okay. So I think I said another city was about the same as Moscow for climate, I think. But yes, climate is an aspect because how do you feel when it's snowing? Do you feel happy? Yes. Oh, okay. So we've got Russians who feel happy when it snows. Okay, who feels happy when it snows? Wow. Okay, do that again, because that's interesting. Okay, show me again. How many people feel happy when it snows? Okay, how many people like it when it's hot? Okay, you like both. Okay, alrighty, okay. Wow, okay. Okay, what about when it's raining and dreary? So like London weather, if you know what I mean. London weather is like raining, can't decide if it's going to be hot or cold. Who likes that? Okay, cool. So, I didn't expect the snow answer. That's interesting. There we go. That's good. Okay. So when something snows, when it's very cold here, people from outside may not like it always, but it's an asset, actually. Because what do you expect in Moscow? Do you expect warm weather or do you expect cold weather? You expect cold weather. I mean, I packed an extra jacket which I haven't used yet. It's a snow jacket. It's a 0 degrees jacket. It's my Switzerland jacket, right? So it's 0 degrees, and it's like a ski jacket type thing, and it's in my bag. It's filled up one of the two large suitcases I brought with me, one of which is full of paper, and the other one is full of a ski jacket and clothes. So, and I had to pack for the Middle East. So I was packing for the Middle East, which is just shorts and shirts, and that's about it, really, for the Middle East. So, the point is, I expect it to be cold here. I'm pleasantly surprised that must have been some sort of, God willing, good weather that I haven't got any really freezing cold, right? But I've heard from Russians before that the cold in Russia does not go to the bones like the cold in Switzerland. So there's different types of cold, right? So, interestingly enough, it's not necessarily a liability. It's something you communicate about, so people expect it. So if you expect cold and you get cold, you're not upset. If you expect heat and you get cold, somebody's lying to you. So if you go to the Middle East and it rains and you're on a holiday, would you be disappointed? So you go to a beach somewhere in the north of the Emirates and you sit there on a holiday resort and you're waiting to get a tan and then it's raining. Is that going to disappoint you? So as long as you promise people something and what you promised them is accurate to what they actually get in terms of the weather or something like that, or close